First, I want to talk about is just aspect and its effect on your Ecoroof. So aspect is the compass direction the roof is facing. So in the diagram here, we've got, I'll shoot this in my eye, right? So we've got a south-facing aspect here of this roof. So most of the solar gain is going to happen right here on this roof. We've got a west, so that's going to be a pretty hot little area as well. And then your east and your north side of the building, or the rooftop here. This is just a good example of a residence because, it was sloped and it showed that a little bit better in a flat roof. So in general, the most desirable aspects are really north and east because they really reduce that irrigation demand and that water usage of the plant material. And just the heat gain of the materials it might be edging and those kinds of things. So, in general, we don't want you to install an Ecoroof that looks like this. We're not recommending that because it'd be a little patchwork. But nevertheless, you're going to have much cooler temperatures on the east and north side of the building and likely to have better success with plant material and reduced irrigation need.
So this is on, if you have your choice of designing a building, these slopes are more desirable. If this building is existing, then we're going to talk more about all the details you have to look at with regard to those other slopes.
That's the come next week, and we'll talk to you about that. So the least desirable ones, of course, then are the remainder, the south and west exposure. And Tom, this is your cue on the tree. Oh. Yeah. Okay. But we forgot to put in an example of that. A lot of times you'll have shade that will impact the, there we go, perfect. Nice. See that? It's a little floppy. It's blowing in the wind. So and that happens in Portland. We've got a lot of mature trees, and oftentimes, regardless of what, you might be looking at your building, and it might be south, west, or north, you have this giant oak or maple or what have you that is shadowing the entire rooftop. And that'll have a significant effect, if not a more significant effect, than your aspect will on your rooftop. So pay attention. And what's important, I think, is on that note is if it's an existing building, go up and take a peek at different times of the day and see where that shade's going. You could maybe, Google map it and do some shade studies, but definitely understand where that shade is. So aspect for new buildings, roofs in general are sloped to promote horizontal drainage off of the roof. And flat roofs can drain in all directions or one direction to the middle or to the edges, but a minimum of about a 2% slope on those roofs in order to make sure that they drain. So they're not really perfectly flat at all. But, of course, because they're flat, the aspect of that roof really doesn't have much of an effect on it. It's just going to be hot, regardless, unless you have a big tree or other building items that are around. So the example here on just aspect that we have is we have Buckman Ecoroof, and this is a flat roof, so the aspect may not be that big a difference, but this wall faces due south. So the heat gain on this is quite a bit. It's a little, sunbeams come down, boom, reflect, and hit this guy. And I'll show you an example. You guys are probably cheating looking ahead, but I'll show you the example here of what this looks like on, Tom took this sequence to give a good example of what that heat gain is. So April 6, 2006, looks green, beautiful, lush, cool. Then, no.
It was originally planted with native grasses, but that's another story.
Yeah. Then just a month later, you can see that progression, which is just amazing. That that it's actually drier, brownish color here, and then as it gets farther away from this wall, it's green. And Tom, is that the drain?
And the drainage.
Drain is right over here as well. So water's draining this direction, drain's coming over here. And then if you go, then 2 weeks later, not even a month later, just 2 weeks later, and that whole thing is dry. So in this example, it's a pretty extreme example because that is a fairly tall face that immediately adjacent to this Ecoroof. And it's not an extremely large Ecoroof either, so it doesn't have a lot of buffer, I guess, or a lot of stuff to buffer it from that heat. So then this is May 17th and looking fairly dry. And then on just around the corner, this is an Ecoroof that faces east. This wall faces due east, and you can see, though, is that this wall here is right on the south edge of this Ecoroof. So really, this shot was taken early morning, and so it's getting a little bit of that sun coming straight due east down the face of that wall. But other than that, it's totally in shade. And this, Tom, was not planted. Is that correct?
No, this was planted.
This one was planted?
The gravel below was not.
This one here, right.
And that's an old photo. The gravel area below is covered with sedum that has jumped from the roof above, and it's one of our native sedums that has pretty much colonnaded that gravel area, which has no soil.
They were dared to jump, right? So you can see
they
one.
Looked over and they went, gravel.
Yeah.
They jumped in.
Parachuted down or something. So yeah, there's a little one there, and maybe a couple right over
Yeah,
there.
they're starting to grow there. It's a few years.
Yeah, but
that was planted.
This was planted in
planted with the ferns.
Ferns and shady material in here, and just left untouched really, with no irrigation. And you can see that this was taken. Tom, was this taken similar time as the other ones? Do you think? April or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Are you saying that sedum that escaped is fully covering that lower area now?
About 80% of the lower area, the gravel area, which is about 1.5 inches of gravel ballast. It should.
Yeah, definitely.
We're trying to learn. We're trying to listen. What?
Yeah. That's what you do with all the other thinking that you're doing about that stuff. So then on existing buildings, with the aspect that you have, you have what you have. And what's interesting, though, is that let's say this is a flat roof. In this example, what we wanted to show you was that, there's shade out there. There may be a parapet wall. Maybe this is a mechanical space. On this building, we have a penthouse that's fairly tall, so it really does affect the different sides of the building. So you can't ignore those things. There might be a big mechanical HVAC unit or something like that might be up that will create shade on your structure. So it's not just, there are some rooftops out there that just flat, have a couple of penetrations, and that's about it. But there's also billboards. There's one just if you go over the Hawthorne Bridge, there's a big flat roof, and there's a giant billboard on the middle of it. And I think, boy, that'd be an interesting shade study to see what kind of effect that billboard would have on the Ecoroof, besides detracting from its beauty. But so that's it. That's for aspect on existing buildings.